Go ahead and ask everyone to come on in and take their seats, and we'll get the door shut back. All right, I'm going to call to order our meeting of Natural Resource Committee, and if you would join me, Chris Fugit's going to lead us in prayer.
All right, let's pray together. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you give us, and thank you for the blessings, Lord, to be able to serve you and to serve people. Thank you, Lord, for supplying our every need, and Lord, we do we pray for those that back home in the mountains, and Lord, across Kentucky that really are in need of Lord, help from you and from us. And I pray that you'd help us as people, as churches, as communities, that we'll continue to love our own and to provide for them what they need. I pray that you give us wisdom to make good decisions that would please you most of all, and Lord, that would help our people. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. You could join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have got quite an exciting agenda, but we're going to start off on a little bit of a somber note. As you all know, we just had the passing of my suite mate, an old House member and Senate member, C.B. Embry. And so we're going to do roll call first, and then I'm going to ask the clerk to read a special memorial we've got for him. So this time I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Carpenter, Senator Caslin, Senator Harper Angel, Senator Schickel, Senator Southworth, Senator Turner, Senator Webb, Senator Westerfield, Senator Wheeler, Representative Blanton,
Here.
Representative Bowling, Representative Bridges,
Here.
Representative Birch, Representative Cantrell, Representative Dossett, Representative Dotson,
Here.
Representative Duplessis, Representative Flannery,
Present.
Representative Fugate,
Here.
Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative Kirk McCormick, Representative Marzian, Representative Miles, Representative Gibbons Prunty,
Here.
Representative Scott, Representative Stevenson, Representative Wesley, Representative White, Co-Chair Smith,
Present.
and Co-Chair Gooch.
Have a quorum? All right, we have a quorum. So I need a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting. So all those in favor, sign of aye. Opposed likewise. The motion carries. I'm going to yield just quickly to my co-chairman Gooch to see if he has any comments this morning for this meeting. You have any comments for us, Representative Gooch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but I don't have any, so thank you.
All right, so just if we could have just sort of a moment of silence as the clerk reads this special memorial we have for C.B. Embry.
The citation reads, "The General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, to all to whom these presents shall come greetings. Know ye that State Senator Carlos C.B. Embry, Jr., is mourned on this day and recognized by the members of this honorable body as a distinguished citizen and a state leader who has made many lasting contributions to his family, community, and Commonwealth before his passing on September 29th, 2002. The son of the late Carlos B. Sr. and Zora Romans Embry, he was also preceded in death by his granddaughter, Heather Denise West, and his half-sister, Jane Carroll Hardwick. He is survived by his cherished wife of 60 years, Wanda Lou Ralph Embry, beloved children, Laura Ann West, Barbie Embry, and Carlos B. Embry III. Grandchildren, Meredith Embry, Carlos B. Embry IV, Roy Dale West Jr., and April Nicole Laughlin. Great-grandchildren, Carlos B. Embry V, and Asa Wayne Embry. and a host of other family members, friends, and loved ones. A resident of Morgantown, Kentucky, and a graduate of Western Kentucky University, who also studied at the Kentucky Institute for Economic Development, Duke University, and Kentucky Wesleyan College. Senator Embry served as a general manager for Embry Newspapers Incorporated and as a teacher at Pleasant Ridge Elementary School and Horse Branch Junior High School before entering public service when he became the youngest elected mayor of Beaver Dam in 1970. In 2002, he began his tenure as a member of the Kentucky House of Representatives, representing the interests of House District 17 from 2002 until 2014, when he was elected to the Kentucky Senate, where he served honorably on behalf of Senate District 6 until his passing. In addition to his service as a vital member of the Interim Joint Committee on Natural Resources and Energy, he successfully sponsored legislation that was signed into law by 5 different governors, served dutifully as a member of the Committees on Agriculture and Transportation, as well as the State Police Safety Measures Task Force, as co-chair of the Tobacco Settlement Agreement Fund Oversight Committee, and as chair of both the Veterans Military Affairs and Public Protection Committee and the Budget Review Subcommittee on Education. Senator C.B. Embry, Jr., a public servant of the highest caliber and a man of tremendous warmth, integrity, and vision, will be remembered by all those whose lives were touched by his presence. And on the motion of co-chairs Senator Brandon D. Smith and Representative Jim Gooch, Jr., and the members of the Interim Joint Committee on Natural Resources and Energy, is hereby deemed by this honorable body most worthy of its remembrance. Done in Frankfort, Kentucky, this 20th day of October in the year 2022.
Tony, thank you. Do we have any comments that members would like to make at this time? Yes, please, go ahead.
CB was a mentor of mine. I was proud to serve alongside him to help pass Right to Try, and he would always answer questions and help me out. And I was happy to serve on this committee alongside him. So he will be deeply missed in our area.
Very good. I'll say, CB, I served in the House with CB, and he was my suite mate over in the Senate, and so for me, it makes it a little extra tough because Tom Buford was on one side of me and CB was on the other. Tough losing both of my suite mates, but you know, the CB that many of you all saw in the last couple of years, where he was unable to get around freely and you know, restrained sort of the wheelchair, is not really the CB that many of us knew years ago. He was an active runner, ran marathons and ran into a lot of them. So it's surprising to know the history of this incredible person that we serve with. Very quiet, but I don't know how many people worked as hard as this guy did on every single call, every single letter that came into his district, attended every single function, whether it was a school play, a bake sale, Lions Club. I mean, he really may even have the record for that, but an incredibly wonderful public servant, and he will be missed. So with that said, we'll just do a moment of silence for CB. All right, now we've got an agenda here, so let's turn quickly to our very first update.
Did you want to do a motion for the citation?
Tanya just made a good point. Before we do that, and they come up, I want a motion. Let's have a motion on the citation for CB. Makes a motion. Have a motion and a second by Gooch. All those in favor of the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. The motion carries. Thank you all. So if we will have David Carter, I was looking for David, always behind the post there, and Dr. Brian Julian to come up to the table. And if you could, just go ahead and identify yourself for the records there, and we will turn the meeting over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm David Carter. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the Commonwealth Office of Technology in the Finance and Administration Cabinet.
Oh, David, could you turn your mic on?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
There we go. Yes, again, I'm David Carter. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer with the Commonwealth Office of Technology in the Finance and Administration Cabinet.
I'm Dr. Brian Huyen. I am the Program Coordinator for the Masters of Global Business and Blockchain Technology at the University of the Cumberlands.
First, I'd like to start by saying thank you to the committee for giving us a few moments of your time today to talk with you about the Kentucky Blockchain Technology Working Group. This group has been convened now for a couple of years, and we certainly would have a lot to talk about, but I know our time with you all is limited today. So I would like to do just kind of some synopsis and summary of our last year's report about us as a group and about us as our mission, and then turn that over to Dr. Brian Huyen, who can kind of expand on 2022 for us a little bit. So to get us started, to talk a little bit about the group, we're comprised of 9 members that are statutorily defined in KRS 42747. And we've added industry experts and other subject matter experts to the team by proposed membership from the statutory members, and voted on those by the core team to bring additional expertise to the table to help us on our research. This year we've added advisory representation from Bluegrass Blockchain, a local organization focused on opportunities for blockchain in business and academia within the Commonwealth. We have open meetings that are held the third Wednesday of every month. We use the state virtual collaboration platform to kind of help spur the membership attendance because of the distributed locations of our members, as well as open that meeting to the public so the public can have some awareness of what Kentucky is doing around blockchain technology. The group works together to compile a report that is a list of observations and recommendations, and we turn that report into the Legislative Research Commission on December 1st of each year. So the mission of the group. The mission of the Blockchain Technology Working Group is to evaluate the feasibility and efficacy of using blockchain technology to enhance the Commonwealth by identifying opportunities for the adoption, utilization, and/or regulation of blockchain technology. So what is blockchain technology? There's a much more detailed description in the report itself that it would take our time plus some to kind of go through really what blockchain is. But in summary, blockchain is a highly secure distributed ledger based system that stores transactional records as blocks on a chain. This creates a system that is highly secure, encrypted, with an inherent trust among the chain participants, and delivers that in a highly scalable manner. To look at our 2021 report, we covered really 5 areas of opportunity that we wanted to look at possible use cases for blockchain technology. And I'll step through those 5 here really quickly. You'll find more detail in the slides and even more detail in the reports, and I'll just give you that 10,000-foot view of what we covered in those. First, we start with finance. And finance, most people think of digital currency, Bitcoin, that kind of thing, but there's so much more opportunity in that sector for blockchain technology. The transactional nature and the security required around financial systems and processes is really an ideal environment for blockchain technology. Some of the recommendations around the financial sector in our report were to explore things like a Kentucky-centric digital currency, a blockchain-based municipal bonds system for possibly funding state projects, and exploring legislation around special depository institutions and digital assets. We included an interesting case study about Wave Financial. Wave Financial, leveraging blockchain-powered technology, can take bourbon, one of Kentucky's most widely known assets, and use that as a long-term investment strategy. All of that based on blockchain technology. We also delved into record management, which is another vertical that's well positioned to benefit from blockchain technology. In this section, we really find some of those opportunities within state government for programs that may rely a lot on document management and record management, such as professional licensing, to be able to leverage blockchain technology to help manage their business. We also look at public utilities as a component of our critical infrastructure. Public utilities with a lot of distributed technologies taking part in their infrastructure for the delivery of critical services to our citizens can utilize the benefits of blockchain technology by securely linking those components together and being able to enable somewhat of a smart infrastructure. Things like self-healing infrastructure and infrastructure that can help the integrity and delivery of the core services our citizens depend on. We also included a case study that kind of highlights this. This case study is actually an article that was published in Fortune magazine that describes how various parts of the infrastructure for a local power grid could communicate between the components and aid the utility provider in finding faults and pinpointing those faults to a specific location. Without that kind of interaction between the components, they would have to search throughout their infrastructure to find the failure, then dispatch crews to fix any faults. With blockchain technology and the components talking amongst themselves, they can assist the utility provider in pinpointing where that fault is, and they can dispatch directly to that location to quickly restore services to the citizens. We also cover logistics and supply chain. And this is one you may not typically think about, but Kentucky is uniquely positioned to serve as a central logistics hub for the East Coast. Our central location, our proximity to most East Coast population, and the convergence of the interstate infrastructure in Kentucky that moves west really puts us in a good position. The distributed networks that would need to interconnect logistic shippers, transporters, receivers, and other entities involved in a logistics and supply chain sector would benefit greatly from the use of blockchain technology because of the security involved and the ability to have disparate partners on the chain interact in a very secure manner. Lastly, we went into healthcare. Modern healthcare is highly dependent on the sharing of very sensitive protected health information across multiple entities, providers, and insurance carriers. This type of communication also, because of the ability to share securely across a number of entities with a level of trust, is really highly adaptable to blockchain technology. One of the key recommendations in this section of our report was to explore grant opportunities opened up by federal entities such as the Centers for Disease Control. During the global pandemic, they recognized the need to share protected health information at a national level for the pandemic response. Technologies like blockchain can help empower that kind of communication and collaboration. Beyond the five primary areas of focus that we had in our report, we also made some recommendations, some directly related to the group itself and some to help drive the direction of blockchain in the Commonwealth. We made the recommendation that the scope and the composition of the working group may be due for a review. It was a great scope at the beginning, but as we continued to do our research and we continued to provide our reports, we've identified so much more opportunity in other spaces such as economic development that could bring a lot of value to the Commonwealth. We also maybe recommended the establishment of a blockchain leadership position in the state, someone to take ownership of blockchain and help drive it forward within the Commonwealth. And as mentioned in a lot of the other recommendations, we also recommend keeping a watchful eye on legislation that is occurring in other states as the technology matures and becomes more prolific in a lot of more industries. And at this point, that's a really good segue for me to pass this off to Dr. Brian Julian to kind of take us through 2022.
Thank you, David. Just want to go over some highlights of what will be coming in the 2022 annual report, things that we have been looking at, subject matter that we have been exploring. I have been a speaker at many conferences representing the state of Kentucky on a Southern state policy where we discuss legislation amongst the different states. So I have been interacting with other states and state blockchain leaders. But some of the highlights of what some of the other states are doing, Tennessee earlier this year issued an RFP for their unclaimed property to secure a partner that can custody digital assets. Digital assets go beyond just cryptocurrency. It's a large expansion. You're getting into digital securities, digital commodities, basically all the financial instruments that blockchain will impact. Currently, most treasurers' offices for their unclaimed property, if they were to get cryptocurrency, they just sell it off and hold it as cash. However, with the development of digital assets, that is not going to be a possibility because many of them, such as securities or even ownership in land or other real estate, may not have a secondary market. So how do you custody those assets if you cannot just sell them for cash and then hold the cash? So Tennessee issued an RFP. The Treasurer of South Carolina is also looking into this. So as we move forward, the Treasurer's Office is going to need to know how to hold and custody a lot of these new digital financial instruments. Florida and South Carolina have both started funding efforts to investigate further blockchain, how they can utilize it as an economic development tool to bring companies into the state, as well as where government could best adopt blockchain technology for its transparency, for its integrity, for its immutable record to utilize within government functions, such as government auditing and accounting. Florida, their House and Senate, their General Assembly, they earmarked $500,000 for the Department of Financial Regulation, which is the same as our Department of Financial Institutions, to create a 3-person office to investigate blockchain, cryptocurrencies, digital assets, digital securities, and how those are best regulated or least regulated, depending on how you look at it, and how the office will oversee that. South Carolina Treasurer's Office also received from their General Assembly $500,000 for a blockchain technology education office to educate legislatures, elected officials, and just the general population in blockchain technology and emerging technologies as well, to best push forward South Carolina as a leader in the emerging technology field. Virginia and Texas both changed their banking legislation to allow state-chartered banks to custody digital assets, which we mentioned a little bit there under the Tennessee Treasurer's Office. In December of this past year, the OCC released Interpretive Letter 1179, which allowed nationally chartered banks to custody digital assets, whether, again, in the form of cryptocurrencies or other digital assets. State parity laws allow state banks now, under certain circumstances, to be able to custody as well. So one of our recommendations last year has somewhat changed from that special purpose depository institution like Wyoming, because the emerging technology is changing so quickly and so rapidly. The field is changing. So now banks are actually able to do that. For state banks, they would have to go through Commissioner Vice and DFI and have to have a certain CAMEL rating to be able to do that. But our state banks and even our credit unions under certain circumstances are permitted, but we still want to look and see if perhaps there is legislation like Virginia and Texas that could be passed to allow banks to go ahead and do that versus going through the state parity process. And there's another new development out of South Carolina, the Catawba Tribal Nation, which is a Native American nation that has a reservation in South Carolina. Tribal nations are treated much like state governments as far as the federal government is concerned. They have created the Catawba Digital Economic Zone, which is a quasi-state government, which is going to be built on and for blockchain and Web 3.0. They are passing legislation such as to recognize DAOs, which is a special kind of corporate structure. It's a decentralized, autonomous organization. That's what DAO stands for. As well as they are the first government entity to adopt the new UCC recommendations in regarding emerging technology. Federal government has had a few legislative bills put forward. Don't want to go deep into those, but we have the Blockchain Innovation Act that's House Rep DeSoto out of Florida, the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, National R&D Strategy for Distributed Ledger Technology, and then the biggest one right now is the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, also known as the Loomis-Gillibrand crypto bill. Senator Loomis is from Wyoming, so a lot of this is based on what they learned in Wyoming with all of their updates regarding blockchain technology. So it's somewhat following the leadership that Wyoming had in this space. As mentioned, the ULC has the emerging technology amendments. I was informed by Deputy Commissioner Justin Burse of the Department of Financial Institutions that this is already moving forward. We had recommended last year that it be adopted early so we can move forward with that process. But my understanding is it is moving forward for this legislative session coming up in 2023. Banking, I had mentioned these already. And then the SEC and the CFTC are currently in a regulatory dispute or a turf war over who should be regulating cryptocurrencies and digital assets. SEC says they're securities. The Commodity Financial Trading says they're commodities. So there is still some need for better defining who's in charge of the regulation, whether it's just one or is it because it's such a versatile technology, would it be by how it's being used versus what it actually is? One other thing before I get into the potential recommendations, also at the state and local level, there have been a few developments. I do not know if you are familiar with NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. These are used right now for more marketing and fun aspects, such as Bored Apes and fancy sports cards and other. But this is going to be utilized in a more functional aspect in the future. San Jose County in California has contracted with a company to begin to release their birth certificates and land deeds on blockchain to ensure the transferability, the transparency, the integrity of that data. As been mentioned in the news, you've had deed thefts, which have been building across the country. Issuing land deeds as NFTs could potentially stop that theft and to ensure that the deeds are indeed secure and that they are accurate. This is especially important, I think, as we work forward in the state. We've had last couple of years the county clerk. I can't remember what the task force was, but looking into modernizing their processes, especially with what we saw with the tornadoes back in December, taking out county clerk offices, county courthouses, and losing documents. So the implementation of blockchain within the recordizations of the counties and state governments, even city governments, would be very beneficial. So some of our recommendations that will be coming out are very familiar to what we had last year, as they are still important. The expanded scope, I think, is needed. We have somewhat of a narrow scope, but we still have some flexibility. But with the different utilizations of blockchain technology and the different directions that the technology has gone over the last 3 years since our group was formed, we need an expanded scope to basically go where the evidence leads us. Also, the membership, there are probably better opportunities, as I mentioned. This is a financial primarily being used in a financial situation. So perhaps a representative from our Department of Financial Institutions would be a good member, but a review of the membership and seeing if there are some other or better members for the group going into 2023. UCC, I already mentioned, banking financial institutions already mentioned, but also with all the other southern states that we saw, Florida, South Carolina, we need to be a proactive, agile working group and perhaps funding, much like the South Carolina and Florida offices were provided the treasurer and the financial regulations. We need to be able to move quicker. The working group currently is more of a passive fact-finding group. Perhaps it's time that we really look into having maybe a small office or even the blockchain emerging technology czar for the state, so we can maintain our leadership in this field. When we passed the working group in 2020, we were one of the first ones. We were at the vanguard. over the last couple years, we've started to slip as other states have accelerated their process and put resources, money, and personnel behind it. So that is where we're going, and I want to leave some time for questions, but that's all we have, and thank you for having us here.
Okay, do we have any questions for our guests? Okay, we have Senator Southwood.
Thank you all for the update. Going back to this article that you shared, I noticed the date was 2016 on the idea of reinventing the power grid. And the thing I'm concerned about, you mentioned other emerging technologies later on, about half or 2/3 of your presentation. It seems like to me, based on what I'm aware of, is that blockchain, I kind of think of it as like an 8-track. It's kind of coming and going. Something else is replacing it already, but perhaps they share similarities. But can you talk to the next generation after blockchain that we're already starting into, and how are we dealing with that? Or is some of this research going to be obsolete and we need to kind of shift course?
No, I believe blockchain's here for a while. Blockchain, as it basics, it's a ledger. It's a decentralized ledger. It's a record of transactions. The article you're referring to is the utilization of blockchain with other emerging technologies such as IoT, which is the Internet of Things, as well as autonomous agents and smart contracts. Basically, that is an older article, but it was more of an example of how this is utilized. As we noticed in 2003 with the power outages that hit the Northeast and a lot of areas, what happens is with your energy grid, if a line goes down, it just shifts automatically the power to another line. Utilizing autonomous agents, smart contracts, IoT, and then recording all this in the blockchain, what would happen is these autonomous agents that are associated with each pole or each line would automatically contract with another line to share power as not to allow cascading failure when multiple lines overload another line that gets overloaded to another, which is what led to the 2003 blackout. So blockchain is going to be around for a while, but it's the interaction of all these emerging technologies, which I haven't even mentioned, artificial intelligence, which is part of the autonomous agent, as well as quantum computing. All of these are going to interact to change how we do business and finance in the future.
So the quantum computing and things are going to maybe be included in the expanded scope that you're suggesting?
No, I'm sorry. Our expanded scope we're looking for is utilization of blockchain in different areas. A lot of this, our current statute really focuses us more on public utility, public infrastructure. We do not have any finance or real estate or any of the other uses that it's being used in right now. So the scope is more as where the blockchain can be utilized. However, that is an interesting aspect that perhaps this needs to expand into the emerging technology as a whole to start looking at these IoT, AI, quantum computing, and how all of this will impact the state.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we certainly appreciate the report. This is a report that this committee put together and passed legislation several years ago to set forth the motion for this, and the whole purpose of it was like a Star Trek mission where you're supposed to go out and find. And so we had left the perimeters pretty broad for you all, and you've done a really good job, considering that when this committee started, less than a handful of people understood what triple digiting accounting was. So we appreciate that. And if you've got a folder, I guess, do we have copies of their work in all of our folders?
We have.
Okay, so we've got a report for the members to be able to take home if they have further questions for you. So with that said, gentlemen, thank you all, and we look forward to discussing among ourselves about what the next changes may actually be, because I do think it's time for us to tweak it. And you're exactly right, Dr. Julian. We've missed a couple of opportunities last year to do some stuff to catch up, because we were literally touted across the globe as one of the states that really seemed to be awake at the wheel in this technology. But after we did that, a lot of other states responded, so I'd like to see us always stay in the lead. So we've got a couple of things up our sleeve for you guys we think you might like. So with that said, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all.
All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and call up looks like the Deputy Secretary is with us, and Commissioner Sloan as well, if you guys want to go ahead and come to the table. And anybody else that you've got. As you guys go ahead, make sure your mics are on for us and identify yourself for our records.
Oh, there we go. Good afternoon. John Lyons, Deputy Secretary of the Energy Environment Cabinet.
And I'm Gordon Sloan, Commissioner for the Department for Natural Resources.
Kenya Stump, Executive Director, Kentucky Office of Energy Policy.
Welcome to our committee. We'll go ahead, in the effort of time, we'll just turn it straight over to you, Commissioner Sloan.
Thank you very much. I'm going to, pardon me, John, you want to start off.
Few opening remarks, Gordon. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Smith, Co-Chair Gooch, and the members of the committee. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about Kentucky's energy landscape. It's ever evolving, ever changing, and recent information we want to pass along to you today is, I think, very important. As you know, our energy mix here in Kentucky is nearly 100% fossil fuel driven, dominated by coal electricity generation, with the remainder being natural gas for the most part. Both coal and natural gas over the last several periods that we monitor have been higher, and as a result, we're going to face higher electricity costs for our citizens. Certainly, the pandemic has played a role in that. The war in Ukraine has played a role in that, among other global forces that sometimes we don't have a whole lot to deal with or to be able to control. Maybe in a counterbalance way, that has also resulted in some positive things, that being new mines are opening and new oil and gas wells are being drilled. We've been issuing a lot of permits in both of those sectors. Gordon will talk about some of those things regarding coal employment, coal production in Kentucky, and consequently coal severance taxes going up for our coal-producing counties, which is very encouraging. One thing I want to leave you with before I allow the Director and Commissioner to get into the detail of our presentation, and something that's really just for informational purposes only, although we would certainly appreciate your ideas and help in this matter, is the issue of our mine safety specialist. We simply cannot compete with the federal government when it comes to hiring mine safety specialists. We're losing them pretty rapidly to higher paying jobs on the federal scale. I know that's a function of our state pay scale, our state grading scale, and it really cannot compete. But I would just leave you with this. If you've never been to a mine safety contest, I would encourage you to go to one. It will really show you what these men and women are there to do, and it's to protect the safety of our miners. I know if I had a loved one in a mine, and a deep mine especially, I'd want those folks there. So anything that we might be able to do, come together and try to help us retain these folks, we would certainly appreciate it. Just to give you an example, their starting salary at the federal level is $10,000 higher than our average salary for our folks, and they quickly move up the ladder and outpace our salaries by nearly $30,000 within 2 years, and plus have the benefits that we just really don't have at the state level. So just wanted to pass that along, something to think about as we move forward. But with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Sloan for his part of the presentation.
Thank you very much, John. So the committee had asked us to give an update on the state of coal in Kentucky.
Commissioner Sloan, have you got your, I apologize, do you have your microphone on?
It is now.
Okay, now?
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
now we can hear you. Thanks.
I apologize. So the committee had asked us to give an update on the Kentucky coal industry. So I'm going to start off real quick with coal employment. These columns are composed of, in blue, are a number of underground miners. In orange are surface miners. Prep plant employees are in gray, and our office workers in yellow. So in the year that COVID struck Kentucky in 2020, we had a total of 3,914 employees. In 2021, that bumped up by 379 for a total of 4,293. Fortunately, in 2022, we increased that number by 472 to a total of 4,765. So employment is moving in the right direction. Coal severance taxes. This chart starts with 2017, where we received right at $100 million in coal severance taxes. It went down in 2018 to $90 million, bumped up a bit in 2019 to $93 million. Unfortunately, again, in 2020, when COVID hit, we went down to $59 million in coal severance tax receipts. Since then, it went down just a little bit in 2021, but we're on the right direction in 2022, where we have received $70 million. And you'll see a note there at the bottom of the slide that for FY23, the first quarter is up 72.2% over the first quarter of FY 2022. So again, another good piece of news for the coal industry and our counties. This is about coal production. This goes back to 2002 to give you some perspective. And this chart is composed of, in blue, Western Kentucky production, red for Eastern Kentucky production, and gray for a cumulative total. You can see that in 2002, we started out with about 124.4 million tons of coal production. Since then, it has gone down. In 2019, we had 36.1 million tons of production. In 2020, when COVID struck, we went down to 24.2 million tons of production. We bumped up a little bit in 2021 to 26.4 million tons. And this chart is a little deceiving in that it looks like coal production has gone down since 2021, but 2022 year to date only has 3/4 of numbers in it. So that number at 3/4 was 21.8 million tons. So when we get the final numbers for the fourth quarter, we should be at least at 28 million tons and probably more. So again, that coal production is moving in the right directions as well. Take a little closer look at the last several years of production. This chart is in weekly production, and we started off 2020 in January at about 600,000 tons, but within a few months we had dropped down to almost half that, 312,000 tons per week. Generally since then, it has crept up. As of today, or at least as of October 1st, that week, we're back up to almost where we were. We're producing 553,000 tons of coal per week. So again, good news, we're moving up from COVID. Another metric we have is what we call actively producing permits, or AP. That's where permits that are actually putting coal on the ground and shipping it off. And this chart goes back to 2006, when we had 361 AP permits. But just like coal production, the number of permits has also decreased over the last 15 years. In 2019, we had 94 AP permits. In 2020, when COVID hit, we dipped down to 56. In 2021, we went up to 66. In 2022, we moved up again another 15 points, so that we had 81 AP permits at the end of 2022. As of now, we have another 5, so we're at 86 actively producing coal permits. Again, good news. From the Division of Mine Safety, where coal mine licenses are issued, you can see this is a combination of surface mines and underground mines licenses. So in 2017, we were at 201 mine licenses, bumped up a little bit in 2018, and in 2019, we were at 219 licenses. Again, COVID hit in 2020, and we went down to 157 mine licenses, down a little bit more in 21 to 146. In 2022, we had 150 licensed mines, but in just the last week or so, we've had 4 more mines that have licensed, so we're up to 154 licensed mines. The committee asked for some numbers on coal permitting. So these are the last 2 years of mine permit numbers. You can see in 2021, as far as applications for permits, we received 12 original permits, 13 amendments, 17 applications for major revisions, and 159 applications for minor revisions. Our numbers for 2022 were similar. We again had 12 original permits, 20 amendments, 17 major revision applications, and 122 minor revisions. As far as permits issued in coal mining, the 2 years, 2021, we had 10 original permits issued, 18 amendments issued, 13 major revisions, and 161 minor revisions issued. In 2022, we had 7 originals issued, 15 amendments issued, 16 major revisions issued, and 117 minor revisions. So, Chairman, that concludes my portion of the presentation, unless you have questions for me.
Yeah, do we have any members that have any questions this time? Senator Webb.
Thanks for your report, Gordon. How many mine safety specialists do we have now?
We currently have 41 who are assigned to mine rescue teams.
This is the second committee I've sat in today where we're losing people to the federal government on pay scale issues, one being our veterinarians to USDA, and now we're hearing we're losing them to the feds in this regard. And I just can't stress enough, as a former underground surface miner myself, how important it is to have that complement on the ground and ready to activate. And we do have some of the best in the country, best people there, and that's why they're stealing them from us, I'm sure. But just to reiterate to the committee that, you know, when it comes budget request time, that it's important, if we're going to have a viable industry and have expansion in both those regards, you know, we've got to have those people on the ground. And I just think we should keep the issue awareness raised going into the next budget cycle. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Commissioner, I've got a question for us. Senator Webb had mentioned about the mine rescue, and these guys do a fantastic job, and I have attended quite a few of those. How do we determine the numbers? That is the number of mine rescue personnel. Is that based upon how many men and women we actually have in the mine, or is there any kind of correlation?
There is a cutoff at 36 miners in a certain mine, either underground, surface. There has to be, underground mines, 36 miners. At that point, the mine has to field a team for itself.
Okay, yeah, because I remember we worked on something for that as well. But so you had mentioned, you said there's 154 mines that we've got open now. Is that across the whole state?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then how many mining companies is that?
I don't have a fix on that. I can see what we can come up with, because there are numerous mines. There are some that are, conglomerates, but there are others that are mom and pop shops, others that are coming in from out of state. So when you ask how many companies, that's going to be hard to fix. So
we can try to get that for you, Senator.
Yeah, we've had it for, and I appreciate if you could, because I've noticed, just having grown up obviously in the coal fields and used to work for River Processing back in the day, so many of those companies are gone. Starfire,
Yes.
all those guys are gone, and as David left out, then sold out, I guess Pine Branch over to Blackhawk. There just seems to be this just consolidation of what's left, and I'm thinking I really can only count about 4 that I know of out of what was probably originally in my day up to as many as probably 300 different mines that were over there. So is there more than 4 coal mines that we know of, just in Eastern Kentucky alone, that we would talk about that are mining?
When you say mines, you mean, or mining companies?
Just the company, they're all kind of tied together. They'll have different branches and stuff like that, but pretty much the companies like, say Blackhawk or Alliance, the ones that I can only really think of 4 of them. So when I was looking at that number, that's a lot of mines out there for just a few mining companies. So I'm thinking maybe that'll be out west.
Now you're certainly, Mr. Chairman, I think you're certainly on point. You have these companies and you have subsidiaries and offshoots under different LLCs, and We'll look into that. I think we can probably track that down pretty good and tell you, how many parent companies there are out there if that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see to get a number again, because I know that one time we tracked that, pretty heavily to see, because we were dropping mines pretty rapidly there for a period of time, and driving past a lot of places as you head toward Garrett that have been a thriving community. Now the gates are changed, or somebody's cut through the gate and they four-wheel through there. But so I'm just curious about that for us.
Sure.
Okay.
And as far as the speed, like, could you explain, because a lot of this committee, they're relatively new to the coal aspect of it, but to get a renewed permit, could you walk them through, and a coal company goes through to get its permit renewed, what that would, to explain to somebody that may not understand that?
Renewal is not too difficult. You have to apply 120 days ahead of when the permit ends. So then you do have to provide certain information through our Division of Mine Permits on what has happened during that first 5 years of the permit. We have, I believe, 65 days for original permits. That's a clock that starts and stops. So when we receive it, the clock starts.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you could walk through that, because the 65 days would maybe lead people in this committee to think that it was a true 65 days, but it's kind of explain to them how that works.
That's right, sir. When we receive it, the clock starts. Every day that it's on our desk, the clock ticks. We have 65 days for an original permit. But typically what happens, it goes through an administrative review to make sure it's complete, and then later it goes through a technical review once that administrative review is complete. But once we send it back, if we find any kind of deficiency that we need to have corrected, we send it back to the coal company or the contractor, and our clock, that 65-day clock, stops until we get it back, because sometimes they're very good about getting it back to us promptly, and other times conditions change. They may not want to continue with that permit. So sometimes it does take a little bit of time. You can see from these numbers that we looked at, applications versus permit issued, that there was some difference. You would seem to think, okay, in this year we had this many applications, we should have this many permits issued the next year. But sometimes they do drop off.
And let me add, Mr. Chairman, that all of our permitting programs are built that way, and where that's really important, the clock is for new permits. Renewals, you keep mining.
They should be automatic, right?
Yeah,
So,
you keep
which
doing
is my
whatever you
point,
were doing. But there could be clock issues for major revisions or amendments. It just depends on the definition of those things in the specific permitting programs, where if you want to add acreage or something like that, that may be a clock determined issue for us as well. But typically it's that, as Gordon explained it, it's a start and stop deal with notice of deficiencies, and those timeframes are usually in working days, not calendar days.
Yeah, I appreciate that. For me, I was thinking, but the renewables is pretty straightforward. Most of these companies know that they're planning way out ahead of themselves, and if they're in business, and there's just not many left, and the reason they're left is because it's really become a bookkeeping thing. And you mess up one of those, and it can cause that permit to be delayed, can cost you millions of dollars, and the clock starts all over again. So it's probably fair to say the ones that are left out there right now are pretty good. They have as many people on their books as they do probably in the ground. It's rare that a renewable doesn't get renewed, right? I mean, it's
Right.
kind of baked in. Okay,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
but Representative Birch has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One is, I've been curious about when you go through the process of allowing someone to open a mine, what kind of instructions do you give them from the beginning to when they actually close the mine down, and for the cleanup and all that kind of stuff? And what are the penalties for not doing that?
So for coal mine, the first, usually if you're opening up a totally new mine, we would have to start under our, what we call SMAC, or our Surface Mine Control Reclamation Act, the federal act, which requires the permitting. So there has to be, I think, 6 months of data collection on groundwater, surface water, things like that. So it's not an instantaneous process. You have to have 6 months of data first before you can even make the permit application. Most of our Coal companies are pretty sophisticated where they use contractors, engineers who know the business. It is pretty sophisticated. As I said, you have to start out with our SMACRA permits, but then you also have to have a mine license under our Division of Mine Safety. They're two different organizations. We follow the federal law pretty much on both of them, but we have enhancements, as we might want to call them, for both of our states. So then once the mine is open, if it's a surface mine especially, it's got to make sure that it doesn't contaminate or pollute the environment through mine waste or through the waste that goes into the ponds, the runoff, things like that. So again, it is very sophisticated. It's not something that somebody can just pick up and do. Once they're mining, and if they conclude their mining, it falls back under that SMACRA that I mentioned, that they have to do a reclamation of the mine site to return it to its approximate original contour.
Well, the reason I asked that question is that for years I've heard about how they have not cleaned up after they finished taking the coal out of the mine. And we're stuck with a lot of these right now that we have to do it ourselves, so to speak.
Well, we actually, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
They what?
We have our Kentucky Reclamation Guarantee Fund that collects fees from coal mines and mined land, unmined land, so that acts as a backstop in case if a coal company were to go out of business and did not have sufficient bonds, we could have that fund provide the bonds, and that's what it typically does. It supplements the bonds that are in place. So, but it's not easy, it's not fast, but one of the bright spots is we had a bankruptcy called Black Jewel and Revelation back in 2019, and we have some reclamation ongoing. We had about 32 permits out of that bankruptcy that weren't purchased out, and we are in the process now of reclaiming those. We have actually gotten at least several of those mines, those old mine permits in Floyd County. I think also Pike County have been reclaimed. So we're doing good there.
And Representative, I'll add that we work with a surety bonding company and reached an agreement with them on this reclamation. So we've that's another avenue to clean these up.
How much does it cost to reclaim or to get it back to somewhere near what it was before they started stripping or whatever, how they're mining it?
I hate to give you a lawyer answer, but it depends. It depends on how much disturbance you have, how much, if there are high walls, how high those high walls are there impoundments that have to be taken out? Those are huge, huge things that we have to think about. So we do try to go out and do an estimate for each one of these coal mines that go out of business and determine how much liability there is to the state, if there is going to be any.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good, and I want my members to please stay. We need to vote out an issue for Fish and Wildlife before we get out. But Commissioner, just quickly, my last thought is that the 154, I'd asked my staff to look that up because that seemed high for me out there as far as mines are reducing, and it's actually, we have 86 actively producing coal right now, but there's 68 that are not. And what it looks like to me is these are hung up on some sort of a water permit situation. So why would we have such a large group of our mines out there at a time when the market's incredible that are not able to get in on this market due to some sort of a hang up with water permit?
Chairman, I'd like to see those numbers because we have one backlogged KPDS permit. And so it's not a water permit that would be holding those up, so I'm not quite sure what that number is.
I'll tell you why not to hold everybody up, but I'll get that down here to you before we leave,
Yeah.
so we've got that. Because
Yeah.
that's one of the things we really want to make sure, especially in lieu of what's happening with the cold weather hitting, energy crisis going up. We want to make sure that we're maximizing every available resource that Kentucky has to mitigate these punishing prices that are getting ready to hit people in Kentucky. Because we know we have enough of it to make a global impact, not just for Kentucky. Our fuels that hit the ground affect a lot of other people other than us, but it's a great way for us to fight back against the inflation and what's happened at the federal level. We don't have to suffer that in Kentucky. So we want to make sure that there's 68 additional mines. It's a lot of employees, a lot of other issues out there with it. But I'm just, when you said 154, I was very excited. Even though in the old days, we could go back to those 2-acre permits, we know we've had, over 500 mines where we had SCOPA, the Small Coal Operators Association, which probably I think still has an office downtown Lexington, but I don't know those days will ever come back. We want to make sure that we have somebody in the game, that everything that the state we can do to help them make sure they're in compliance, but that they're mining, we certainly want to do that. So if there's no other further questions, we appreciate you all coming. I will see if we get that document down to you right now, and thank each of you.
Thank you.
Oh, we have that? Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure I don't lose my members so we can vote out. Or you're going to mess up bear season now. You're going to get us in trouble with bear season if we don't get done. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Smith and Co-Chairman Gooch. I am Kenya Stump. I'm from Muhlenberg County. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you on the global coal and natural gas markets and the status of that. Will you do my slides?
Yes.
That's fine. Leave it right there. As the primary agency responsible for Kentucky's energy security plan, fuel monitoring is essential to our mission to support the utilization of all of Kentucky's resources. Our office is mandated to provide programs that provide central access for collection, maintenance, and analysis of data and information on all forms of energy supply, demand, consumption, and conservation. We can't do this without access to quality data as well as relationships with all of our fuel suppliers in the state. A few things I'd like to point you toward. Our quarterly coal dashboard provides quarterly coal production and employment information available to the public. And then our situational awareness dashboard provides real-time commodity pricing on all of Kentucky's fuels and nationwide trends. Next slide, Gordon. And next slide. So about 95% of Kentucky's coal stays in the United States, and about 2/5 of that coal remains here in Kentucky. The rest is sent to 20 other states, where it is burned primarily through our power plants. According to recent census data, our foreign exports from Kentucky have increased to 5% of coal production, and our export markets now include Africa, Asia, Europe, Central and South America. 42% of Kentucky's coal consumption is met with our state's own coal. The remaining coal is consumed in Kentucky is brought in from other states, primarily Illinois, Wyoming, and West Virginia. As Deputy Secretary mentioned, 70% of our electricity generation is coal-fired, and 20% is derived from natural gas. Consumption of natural gas in Kentucky is 5 times greater than our state's production. We do have several interstate gas pipelines that bring natural gas supplies to our Kentucky consumers. We have 22 underground storage facilities that provide about 2% of our U.S. natural gas storage capacity. In 2021, our industrial sector consumed record volumes of natural gas and account for 2/5 of the gas used in Kentucky. 4 out of 10 Kentucky homes use natural gas as their primary fuel for heating. But let's move into exports. As you can see from this chart, year over year from 2021 and 2022, our export markets have increased on liquefied natural gas. That's primarily due to, in 2022, the war in Ukraine, as you can see, and the February spike as our LNG exports increased to Europe. What's not shown on here is in June of this year, the Freeport LNG facility experienced an explosion, which sent natural gas prices skyrocketing and contributed to price volatility in 2022. Freeport LNG is due to be back online 85% next month and will be 100% back online coming into 2023. In 2023, we have FERC-approved LNG export terminals that will be coming online. That will put the United States in a position to be the leading natural gas exporter worldwide. And now we move on to storage. Storage, natural gas markets traditionally look at storage as a way to gauge future natural gas prices. Ahead of last week's Energy Information Administration storage report, gas was sitting at about $6.42 per MMBTU, million BTU. And at the close of that report, came up to $6.7. While the graph shows storage volumes going into September being close to the minimums, we have seen strong natural gas injections in October, bringing it up to the 5-year average. And we're tracking that volumes will be up to that 5-year average coming into the winter season. Next slide. As you're well aware, our natural gas markets experience quite a bit of volatility. Local markets across the United States price their natural gas based on the differential to the Henry Hub gas price. This differential accounts for regional market conditions, transportation cost, and available transmission capacity between locations. That spike that you see in February was the winter storm that hit Texas and Oklahoma. We saw gas prices then climb after that, signaling producers to come into the market. Demand did outpace growth, hence the price increase. And at the same time, we saw inventories were low after that February winter storm. Many factors contributed to this price volatility, including weather-related consumption, production outages, high international gas prices, key pipeline outages nationwide, the price and availability of substitute fuels for power generation, as well as those summer storage injection levels. For 2022, we do see continued volatility that we've experienced, especially since the war in Ukraine in February. However, the positive, we're seeing increased rig counts come online. Production is increasing as a response to the strong price signal. And we are expecting gas prices to level off coming into 2023. Production is expected to increase 3% above last winter's levels. Now we'll move into coal markets. U.S. coal consumption for the second quarter of 2022 was 11% lower than it was for the first quarter of 2022 and 5% lower than the second quarter of 2021. The electric power sector, as we all know, accounted for about 91% of our U.S. coal consumption. In terms of stockpiles, for the second quarter of 2022, our coal stocks grew, and at the end of the first quarter of 2022, they were 2.6% increase over that the previous quarter. Stockpiles in the electric power sector increased as well at the end of the first quarter of 2022. You mentioned the coal markets and the market prices now. The chart you see here looks at U.S. coal exports and imports through 2022. Similar to gas, our exports have increased into 2022. Between the third quarter of 2020 to the first quarter of 2021, thermal coal exports doubled. Steam coal exports were 2.3% higher than the first quarter of 2022, and our metallurgical coal exports nationwide were 24.7% higher. Next slide. So for our monthly coal exports, you can see here U.S. coal exports for the second quarter of 2022 increased 13.9% from the first quarter of 2022, primarily driven by the price signal being sent from the international markets. Here, as an example, the average price of U.S. coal exported during the second quarter of 2022 was $231.68 per short ton. Next slide. This represents historic coal prices by region from 2011 to present. When we look at the blue line, Central Appalachian Coal and Illinois Basin, You can see that in some instances, Illinois Basin coal prices have increased 400%. We're seeing on the Central Appalachian coal upwards of 200% price increases as a response to market conditions, export conditions, the war in Ukraine, as well as European decisions around baseload generation and fuel security issues there. Next slide. This is just an idea of how coal compares to where we are with natural gas. For the week ending October 7th, our Central Appalachian coal was around $8.20 per MMBTU. Illinois Basin is at $8.34 per MMBTU. At that same time, Henry Hub gas prices were around $5.04 per MMBTU. Right now, when I checked before we left, coal spot today is around $7 per MMBTU. We are expecting that to be the price coming into the winter this year, and gas usually will set the cap on where we see coal prices at, and so futures are saying $7 for gas going into the winter. And just a few observations as we close today. What we're saying is our coal and natural gas are global commodities that and are facing similar supply chain and market influences as other commodities. The pandemic, weather events globally and here in the United States, our world economic policies, geopolitical events like the war are all impacting demand, price, and production. The good news is that for coal and gas prices, we are expecting those to be lower in 2023 as we see that supply and demand volatility seek more of an equilibrium. But we will not see prices that return to pre-pandemic levels. As Deputy Secretary Lyons mentioned, due to the price spikes that we saw in the first and second quarters of 2022, we will see consumers bear those additional fuel costs through those associated fuel adjustment charges that will be passed through their utility. We formed the Energy Affordability Work Group, where we work with community action agencies and our utilities on strategies so that we can address issues as they arise for the consumers across the state. And at that, I will take questions.
Do we have any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for the presentation. I think it's obviously something many of us are following and with great concern about what may happen. But thank you very much for going into that detail for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then last, we have Commissioner Storm with us here. Commissioner Storm, you are welcome to come up and kind of fill us in a little bit about this resolution, I guess, we have. Thank you.
The regulations.
Is it what it is? You just briefly tell us what we've got here in front of us, and we don't actually, I'm just being told we don't have to take action on it, just having it on here for the reading is enough, but fill us in quickly on bear season. I think that's what this is about.
Well, first, thank you all. It's a privilege to be here today. Privilege for y'all to take this up and actually help us expedite the season. Just simply, we can talk more complex if you have any questions, but this takes the female quota away from bear season, which is what our hunters and our locals, many of you all from Eastern Kentucky, you're familiar with some of the issues that we're having, and this will remove that female quota. And as of last night, we only had one county closed, and so at the adjournment of this meeting, that quota would end.
Okay, and so it started like 3 days ago, is that right?
It did. It started
to
on
get in
Monday.
To take care of you, but we appreciate the work that you do, and thank you for that. Any questions for the commissioner while he's here? Senator Webb?
I just have a comment. I want to thank the chairman. I know that I requested a couple months ago that this be put on the agenda just for that very reason, so I appreciate the timeliness of it. As the legislator who presented the original bear season through some opposition, we've got a lot of bears. I just got back from out west, and everybody's got a lot of bears, especially the eastern states, and you're seeing urban populations as well. and that's a danger to the bear and the population overall. But for those of us who have regular encounters with the bear in eastern Kentucky, we respect them, we love them, but they're certainly a force to be. I don't really like living with them very close, but this is important, and I just appreciate Commissioner Storm and his agency's attention to this and the specialists that they have in this, and a sustainable and healthy bear population. This is necessary to maintain that. So thank you all.
You're welcome. Nothing further, Commissioner Storm. Senator Sickle.
Thank you. Yeah, I was there. You had an article about it just in the last magazine. I was just reading it last night, but I don't understand exactly what you're talking about. Could you explain to me what you're talking about?
Sure, absolutely. So we have a multitude of seasons within Kentucky. Right now, it's currently bear chase season. So with the use of dogs, the 17th through the 21st. So we're currently in that season. We also have an archery and a firearm season, and they're broken out 1 week at a time.
I get all that, but tell me the thing about the quota and the
Okay.
female. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we have is we have bear zones. We have 3 different zones, and so when certain female quotas are met, then that season would actually end. And so it's a very antiquated system where our hunters actually have to call in daily to find out if they're eligible to hunt the following day. And this will create a season structure where you just simply, that's your week to hunt, and then you know when your season starts and when it stops.
So there'll be no counting.
Correct. There'll be no more, let's call in, see if we can go tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Representative Birch.
Just for my curiosity, how many bears are taken each year to these hunts?
Typically somewhere around 50, less than 100. That does fluctuate, but based on, we didn't stock bears in Kentucky. Bears stock themselves, and so we have a growing population, and so that need to hunt those bears is much more needed. But weather certainly is a factor in terms of participation, and then the likelihood to have a bear sighting. So if we have ideal weather conditions, then we could be near 100, but typically we're less than 100, somewhere around 50.
Is the department doing anything to encourage farmers and that to allow people to hunt on their property?
Absolutely, and I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on what you can do. If you have any issues, you can go to a website called bearwise.org. You can use our website as a tool, fw.ky.gov, and you can search bears. You can find a litany of information. But ultimately, if any of you all would like to talk about bears, you can reach out to us, and we'll be glad to get you any information, tools that you may need.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Commissioner Storm, thank you very much for your leadership over there. And if we have no other further questions for the Commissioner, make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.